Welcome back for part 2 of my interview with Sheva Carr from the HeartMath Institute. If you watched our previous episode, she told us all about how she essentially cured her autonomic dysfunction with HeartMath. And so in this episode, we're going to hear about what exactly is HeartMath, how she uses it and how she teaches it, and how it can be so beneficial to those of us in healthcare. Welcome back, Sheva.
Thank you so much, Bev. Thanks for having me here. I'm tempted actually to just play with the whiteboard here a little bit. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Let's see how this works. We'll do a little experiment. So while we're pulling this up, what I'd like to do is invite your audience to consider, obviously, you guys are giving us your most prized possession, which is your time and attention. We'd like you to consider, if you could have anything at all that you wanted from being here with us, what would it be? For yourself, for your patients, your family, your colleagues. And I just want you to also contemplate if you got what you wanted for yourself, your family, your patients, your colleagues, our world for that matter. How would you feel? And we're going to play a little game here just for a moment. And if you had to pick which one of these lines that we're putting on the whiteboard, you're going to get two choices. Which one of these lines would come closest to representing the feeling you want to have?
So to me, I see that first one, it's like angry, particularly in the color red, but it's jagged, it's red, it's angry. And the lower one is calm and smooth and regular. So I picked the second one.
So Bev picks the second one. For my cardiologists out there, you have to get out of thinking that the top one is AFib and the bottom one is VTAC. Don't go there.
Or the obstetricians in the group, the second one they're going to think is a sinusoidal pattern, and that baby needs to be delivered.
There we go. So get out of those thoughts. Thank you. Right. Okay. So go with, the kindergarten instinct. I want to feel like the green line. Green is go, red is stop. Although if you are thinking sinusoidal or AFib or VTAC, you're barking up a not so bad tree, in that this is a reflection of heart rhythms. So it's not EKG, but HRV, heart rate variability. And this is really the piece of research that put HeartMath on the map, published in the American Journal of Cardiology in 1995. And that is that there's this remarkable link between our emotions and our heart rhythms. And those heart rhythms are producing system-wide influence on our autonomic nervous system, which I talked a lot about in my own story, but also our endocrine system, our immune system, and our central nervous system, the part of our brain that's perceiving current events and responding to it. So when we talk about the PTSD that I had, self-regulating the heart rhythm turns out to be a trap door or a key in the prison door to let yourself out of that PTSD flashback phenomenon that I experienced as a survivor of war. And many of us who are frontline responders in COVID feel like we just came through a battle. So this capacity to actually self-regulate the heart rhythm into a more coherent phased state produces something system-wide we call physiological coherence that optimizes all of our body systems literally in a heartbeat. We can shift from that top line to that bottom line on the spot. And here's why that's really important for those of us that work in healthcare. You know, after World War II, for soldiers on that battlefield, the military created something called termed deployments to try to avert veteran PTSD. We sent folks to Iraq or Afghanistan for a time, bring them home, give them a break, then send them back, thinking if we just pull people out of the stressor, it'll save their system from overload. The backhanded good news for us as healthcare workers is it didn't work. What that tells us, and the reason that's good news is because do we get termed deployments from COVID or from health crises? We can't say to COVID, you know what, you're just stressing us out. Give us a couple months off and we'll come back and deal with you.
Right. Or take a vacation and think that you're going to come back from vacation and all will be well.
It doesn't, we all know it doesn't work because
Right.
we've tried it. What it taught us in the sort of stress resilience performance industry is that stress is, even though it seems like it is sometimes, it's not in the circumstance. It's in our physiological reaction to the circumstance, and that's something we can learn to take charge of through trainable skill building.
Right.
Where we can self-regulate that autonomic knee-jerk reaction to life events or the habitual fight, flight, freeze survival mode we often get into as crisis interventionists day in and day out. We can bring that system back into regulation on the move, even while the demands are still coming at us. That's really the differentiator of HeartMath. You know, when I had PTSD, yoga was one of the things that helped me tremendously. But when I started my medical practice, if I had a patient who was coding, I couldn't say, you know what, this is stressing me. I'm just going to go to the other room and put out my yoga mat. I'm going to do the little Ashtanga. And then I'll come back with my defibrillator and we'll handle this. The crash card after I do an hour of yoga. Like, we can't do that shit, right? Excuse me, I just swore.
That's
But
okay.
really, like, we can't. We need to be responsive all the time. We need tools like my Toyota Prius that recharge us while we're in motion, because we're in motion a lot of the time as frontline healthcare workers.
Right.
And that's what HeartMath skills give us, a way to self-regulate on the move.
So this is fascinating because everybody is talking about physician burnout, and it's only really been in the last 10 years or so that burnout has even been, you know, a term that we've used. And when you look at, well, when I look at my own training, when I was an intern and a resident, yeah, it was stressful, but you know, we just sort of bucked up and did it. But it seems to me that these kinds of tools would be so beneficial starting very, very early on in medical training, just because of the demands that are so great now, you know, with electronic medical records and quality measures and all of the things that people say are burning them out. So can you tell us, you know, how did you start to, you know, once you found this for yourself, what was your next step in getting it to the people who really needed to have it, to benefit from it?
Well, I feel really fortunate, first of all, just to say that, as I mentioned in the prior interview, the first round of medical school for me, I dropped out because I was already suffering from PTSD from the war, undiagnosed, and I couldn't handle it all. Which is humbling to say. I was one of those overachievers, and it was a tough time for me. The second round, I had these tools on board. That's how I got through my education, my state board exams, my residency. I had started learning these tools during my internship. So I started teaching them right away to my patients in my internship. And if my supervisor was there, I would kind of sneak them in on the side. Like, so I was getting my clinical, you know, brownie points, but also seeing how these tools worked. It was built into my education, and the efficacy I was getting with my patients blew my mind. So that was a lot of motivation and inspiration for me to use them. And eventually, because I was getting such incredible efficacy with these interventions, I came up to HeartMath and said, what you guys are doing is more powerful than any other tool I have in my box. I'll lick stamps for you. How can I help? And right around that time, there were a couple things happening. One was Delnor Community Hospital, which is a little hospital in the Midwest, had just rolled out interventions with their clinical staff because they were having a turnover crisis. And in the first year of implementing these tools with their clinical staff, they saved $1 million in reduced turnover alone. That didn't even count for the cost savings to them in patient satisfaction and employee satisfaction and reduced medical errors, all of which we were measuring. So right away, there was an influx of interest from my team, healthcare workers, saying, we need whatever you ordered off the cosmic menu. Where do we get those cookies from the cosmic kitchen? That was happening, but also there were some research studies coming out on the influence of these tools on hypertension and how 6 weeks of practicing these self-regulation skills was producing an equivalent regulation on blood pressure to 2 years of pharmaceutical intervention, twice the benefit of a regular exercise program, a 40-pound weight loss, and a salt-restricted diet. And my colleagues in healthcare don't have time to exercise or take care of themselves. Because to your point, our schooling doesn't train us in self-care. It trains us in push past your own needs.
Right.
That's actually a problem, and it's one that we're addressing now. We're bringing these skills into certain medical schools. We're doing longitudinal studies with med students over the course of their careers, training them in their first year of medicine, their first year of residency. There's also biofeedback technology we have that measures heart rate variability and mirrors it to you in real time. So these students are getting that at the beginning of their careers, which is not unlike watching the soldiers we train in the military. It's much better if we can get to folks pre-deployment than after the fact when,
Right.
well, we know that preventive medicine, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We all know it even in the medical field. But for those of us that are already in practice and burned out from COVID, the good news is these tools also help us refuel our tank and recover.
So HeartMath offers a bunch of different types of techniques, but if you wouldn't mind, can you just teach us one easy, simple way to start to get that heart rate variability under control?
Absolutely. So the first thing is, now the real link that was published in the American Journal of Cardiology that HeartMath made is this connection between emotions and heart rhythms. So anytime we can activate a renewing or coherence building emotion deliberately, we're doing something for our benefit and the benefit of everybody around us. But let's be clear. This is not about putting chocolate icing on a rotting banana peel and calling it dessert. We're not saying just feel good if you feel bad. That's so dumb. What we are acknowledging is that we are recreating emotional states all the time. Like when I pick up the phone and call my husband at the end of a long day and say, you won't believe what so-and-so did. My body doesn't know the difference between the actual experience of it and the rehash of it. So if I pause to do that on purpose to my benefit, just pausing for a moment of appreciation or compassion or care. And this is why the profession that has the highest suicide rate, the highest addiction rate, that's us, by the way, doctors, could be the most resilient profession. Because we're caregivers and human caring actually balances the physiology. So our task is to get into that sweet spot of balanced care that balances us, rather than the overcare that goes to, I've drained so much, I just can't care anymore.
And to those naysayers who say things like, I'm already resilient, I don't need any other practice, don't try to shove this down my throat. How do you approach those kinds of people?
If you're already resilient and you don't need tools, I salute. You know yourself. All I can say is that was not me.
But I think the point about them saying they are resilient is that they really aren't. Not in the way that you and I are talking about. You know, they are the ones who are negative Nellies and burned out and find everything to complain about, including whatever kind of tools we bring to help them.
So this is my dad you're talking about. And if I was fortunate enough to have my dad sitting here today, and I'm not, and that's why, I would say to my dad, do you want your gravestone to say you died of a justified heart attack? August 10th, 15 years ago, he died of sudden cardiac death. And you're describing my physician dad to a T. So heart disease and heart attack is still the #1 cause of death of every profession and in every country in the world, even those in violent conflict, where I also happen to bring these tools for conflict negotiation mitigation at the UN. But still, I stay in healthcare. Why? Because heart disease kills us in double the amounts of every other cause of death. JAMA published a study saying workplace stress, this was in 2007, by the way, workplace stress is a greater risk factor for cardiac episodes and death than all of the other risk factors combined if we're looking at obesity, blood sugar issues, smoking, diet, workplace stress. That's us as physicians. Wow. And here's the sad part of it. If you look at trends next to each other, we knew that in 2007, but assumed that's just life. There's nothing we can do about it. Let's take the way we were trained and push through it. Who cares? I haven't slept in 4 days. Your body cares. So all that is tallied. We pay taxes on it somewhere. How about let's take charge of it and self-regulate it so we can last longer for our patients, if that's what we care about.
Absolutely.
If we can't care about ourselves, let's care enough about our patients that we create longevity in who we are to serve them. And the way we do that is these are things we can mitigate. But if you look at the trends, we knew that in 2007, but assumed there was nothing that could be done. And heart disease and cardiovascular episodes like stroke and other vascular issues have only been on the rise since then. We're not addressing what we know to address, and we can in yourself. All we have to do, you got to wash your hands at a sanitizing station or a sink or something in between patients anyway. You have to change your PPE. Why not add some inner PPE to the equation as you go? Just a few minutes of breathing care and appreciation through the heart has been shown to enhance our immune system, measuring salivary IgA, if you want to know how we did the study, enhance our immune system for more than 6 hours after. So you do the self-care to put a mask on and gloves when you enter a patient's room. Why not put your inner PPE on too? It's just common sense. So what you do, it's this simple, and you can actually do it while you're doing those other things. It doesn't take time. It just takes heart.
Yeah, between patients, when you're going from one room to the next, you can just recenter and do some HeartMath before you go into the operating room, before you go into a meeting or a stressful conversation.
On your commute home, on your commute there.
Don't close your eyes while you're driving, though.
But you don't close your eyes doing it.
You don't have to.
So you can do this eyes open, because you got to breathe anyway. We're just going to instruct you to breathe. And by the way, this is not unlike a breathing that they do in the military called tactical breathing. You breathe with the focus of your attention in the heart. So there's 3 steps to this tool I want to give you that I call my inner PPE. HeartMath calls it quick coherence, the quick coherence technique, because it quickly gets our system coherent. So you focus your attention on the area around the heart, the chest area. Imagine the breath is flowing in through the heart. and out through the heart. So all that means, I know we're not fish with gills. You're not breathing through the chest, but you're keeping your focus of attention in the chest area while the inhale and exhale are even. If you find it helpful, you can count as you breathe in. 5 is recommended, to count to 5. And count to 5 as you breathe out. Or whatever rhythm and pace is comfortable. The even inhale and even exhale start balancing the autonomic nervous system. Sometimes just that is enough. Like if I've just lost a patient, I honestly can't get to appreciation in that moment, to be vulnerable. But I will go to my breathing to minimize my energy drain so I can be there for the next patient.
It's amazing. Just in those 30 seconds that I was doing that while you were talking, I can feel already my whole body is calmer. The heart rate itself is a little bit lower, and my mind just feels more open.
And we have physiological measures of all those things you just described. But here's the fun thing. We're mechanics, so we get into the physiology of this, but you don't have to be a mechanic to drive a car. And what that means is this works really well for patients too. They don't have to understand the physiology of why it works to make it work for them.
Right.
But I want to add the third step when you can. The third step is to activate a renewing feeling like appreciation, care, or compassion for someone or something in your life, and to breathe that feeling in through the heart. And out through the heart. As you do that, Bev, do you notice any other changes in your body?
It automatically brings a smile to my face. And it just makes me feel sort of warm and fuzzy.
And that's not a technical medical term.
Not at all.
How often do you feel warm and fuzzy at the end of a full day at work? But,
yeah, pretty much never.
But we could by choice.
Yeah.
And when we do, we renew. And it prevents burnout. A small intervention. Because here's the deal. These interventions are small interventions that over the long haul create big differences. If we were standing in a room next to each other and turned like each of us 1/8 of an inch or something in opposite directions, we walk across the room, we're in the same spot. But after a 30-year career walking in those new directions, we're in a totally different place. These small interventions make big changes. When I started the first patient education program in a hospital setting using HeartMath in North Hawaii with the Cleveland Clinic, we were doing it at their Heart Brain Institute at Earl Bachan's hospital there. And the first thing they noticed when we were training the patients, they pushed the call button less. So this quick coherence technique that we just did is open source. All of your physicians that just learned this, you're free to start teaching it. Teach it to your patients.
Yeah, I have used it with some of my patients, especially frequent flyers who come in with routine complaints, and there's nothing wrong with them. But when you dig a little deeper, and obviously this does take some time to really sort of find out, what's going on in their life, and they oftentimes will have multiple life stressors that they'll just poo-poo, and they're like, yeah, I'm a parent, and, my kid is failing, whatever, and my marriage is on the rocks, and by the way, I have this pain, So yeah, it can be just so helpful, I think. And there are so many different applications, I think, that we as physicians can use for our patients, but even as importantly, or maybe even more importantly, for ourselves.
Everybody wins when we are better.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Sheva. I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. And for people who are interested in finding out more about HeartMath, where would you direct them?
So my husband and I are the co-directors of HeartMath Healthcare, working with the physician population. You can write to us at DESTRESS, DESTRESS, at heartmath.com. If you're interested in getting certified, for example, in our full body of work to train your colleagues or your patients, but I also want to acknowledge, Bev, you yourself are a masterful HeartMath trainer and a coach and a physician yourself, using these tools in the recovery of your own burnout. So I really want to turn people to you as a resource for their personal well-being and personal coaching, for sure.
Thank you. I would love to be able to teach my clients how to do it. It's so easy to do, as you just demonstrated, and really can have profound effects.
And that quick coherence technique we did, we have like a one-pager that we give physicians that they can hand to their patients, and that you can also use to remind yourself, and it's got some of the science on it. So I'll give you a link to that page in case you want to post it with this video.
That would be wonderful. Once again, Sheva Carr, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And
it's a pleasure.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.